What's up, MetaNerdz? Today we're going to take a closer look at the rarely seen, yet instantly iconic ride of the Separatist's most feared commander, General Grevious. We'll look into what history we have, how this mechanical monster would look in our world, and how a mineral miner from a long-lost Star Wars series may have been the inspiration for this beast. Fresh off the assembly lines of Argyle at Zgomot Turnbull Gupat Corporation, a manufacturer owned and operated by our favorite munes at the Intergalactic Banking Clan, the Sumu 6 Personal Wheel Bike is the not-so-catchy design name for what we commonly refer to as the Grevious Wheel Bike. Brand new, this thing is going to cost you 15,000 credits, which is quite a steal in the galaxy far, far away, priced cheaper than the expendable Vulture Droid, and even less than a single Droideka. Not only is it a swift and powerful vehicle when in wheel mode, but it doubles as a walker, with 4 sprawling legs armed with a terrain claw at the end. This baby is able to spring into action at a moment's notice, grip onto any terrain you might come across. While on its wheels, this ride is only 2.5 meters tall, or roughly 8.25 feet, meaning it's only a Yoda taller than your standard school bus. When in walker mode, the wheel bike stands at a more imposing 3.9 meters tall, or just about 13 feet, making it a Jawa taller than a hoop in the NBA. What it lacked in sheer imposing size, however, it more than makes up for in speed. When rolling down the Powin freeway at full speed, this bike can reach 330 kilometers per hour. That's 205 miles per hour, which begs the question, what are they feeding the Varactyls if good old Bogo was able to keep up with it? To put that in the real world perspective, NASCAR drivers average about 200 miles per hour, and they don't have to worry about driving off 30-story cliffs, into a sinkhole, dodging shots from Cody's finest, all while being chased by the sassiest Jedi in the Order. On its legs, in walker mode, it only manages to have a top speed of 10 kilometers per hour, being around 6 miles per hour, and quite the anticlimactic stat. That's why Grievous was so quick to get this thing rolling. We can see the activation panel the General uses to fire up his wheels, with 5 hinged toggles and a vibrant display, and being open and easy to get into. It appears to be controlled by a set of handlebars, making it a simple enough to control system for any normal humanoid to operate. And that was the idea, as although the Sumu 6 was originally designed as a military scouting vehicle, it eventually found itself being sold to civilians on the racing scene. You can see the munes were playing to multiple markets, not just in galaxy-spanning wars, but even in wheel bike design. Grievous did make some modifications himself, as the wheel bike was sold as a 2-seater, with a pilot and a passenger, making sure there was absolutely no chance he would have a B1 passenger. Grievous disposed of the sidecar feature entirely, favoring instead the ND-53 double laser cannon. Even if his bike was mainly used as an escape craft, it never hurt to pack a punch on the way out. And while we never get to see this cannon fire in any media thus far, it could be speculated that aside from the offensive capability, it could be used to blow holes through any obstacles in the General's path of retreat, for some real Batmobile action. Now of course, the Clone Wars only came about by having both sides base their lies in half-truths, the CIS only talking about Republic corruption and apathy toward crime, and the Republic only focusing on greedy corporations. Nobody working to solve both issues, just shouting how the other side was wrong. In other words, ground news could have prevented the Clone Wars. I've been seeing ground news used in a bunch of different ways, and looks for possible signs of bias in the coverage of these topics. Often the problem isn't that some source is lying, it's just that they're ignoring a problem, and with algorithms feeding you based on what you just watched, it's easy to fall into different bubbles. For example, look at this story on an attack on Ukraine. It's a rare example of one that shows almost no bias, a perfect split from left, center, and right-leaning outlets. Even rarer, 43% of ownership is independent news, and 0% of the 22 sources covering this have major issues with false reporting. I show you this so you appreciate my favorite feature, the blind spot. This highlights the biggest issue, I think, that people don't even see stories from outside of their bubble, with a bunch of stories having 0% coverage from one side of the spectrum. Of course, how a news outlet is ranked on that spectrum is going to be what this all hinges on, and so they pull from 3 different independent media ranking sources. And just by looking at what's ignored by the left and the right, I think you'll agree that it's pretty accurate overall. But another problem that you really shouldn't ignore is that how smaller news outlets are being bought up by larger corporations, giving us the illusion of free choice, but with ground news you can see who is the ultimate owner of that smaller newsroom. And they pack this all into their user-friendly app as well, which also allows you to search for news based on your location. In short, I really do believe that ground news will help you be more informed, effective, and empathetic, as you'll be able to see things from more points of view. Thanks Ground News for sponsoring this video. If you want to check it out, be sure to use the link in the description. And if you want to do the Vantage level subscription, you can get 30% off by using that link. But let's get back to the video. In a genius move by the Munes, this vehicle doesn't use standard fuel, but instead has capacitors built into the chain that made up the wheels. Let's dive into a cross-section to explain what exactly is happening here. As you can see, links within the wheels store energy that is used to fire the main cannon, as well as motivate the legs. To stay stable, this vehicle uses a gyroscopic system. Think of a fancy pool table on a cruise ship, moving effortlessly with the waves to make everything stable. Being a speed demon didn't leave much room for cargo, only supporting 10 kilograms or just 22 pounds of supplies. Being the predominant craft of a cyborg has its advantages. So instead of packing a handmade lunch with a note from Count Dooku, Grievous packed a few more surprises into his wheel bike. Never too far from the good general was his trusty electro staff, as well as his DT-57 Annihilator, a blaster rifle only ever seen in the cold grasp of Grievous, and, well, one other guy.
So uncivilized.
That does it for the specs on this thing, so let's get into its history. We only ever see this model of machine used once for any significant reason, that being the famed Battle of Utapau. Moments before the galaxy was changed forever with Order 66, Obi-Wan Kenobi's mission to destroy the droid's general was underway. Playing to Grievous's ego, Obi-Wan baited Grievous into a lightsaber duel for the ages, in front of an audience of battle droids. The two longtime enemies clashed blades for what would have been their final time. Kenobi got the upper hand, pun intended, by severing several of the cyborg's cybernetic limbs, before the clones of the 212th descended from the skies, looking to finally end the conflict. Following a focused force push, Grievous had felt the tides of battle shift, and followed his oldest tactic of running away as fast as he could, scurrying across the gantry like a roach that just won't die. Grievous was able to climb into his wheel bike and roar off the platform, nearly flattening Kenobi beneath those engineering marvels of the wheel teeth. Zooming through the traffic of battle, Grievous atop his bike plowed through droid and clone alike, only caring for his own survival. Ripped straight from the pages of his classic military guidebook. The wheel bike quickly shifted to its legs, leaping onto the docked control ship's outer hull and rolling down the side to escape his nemesis. These moments show the real versatility of this machine, making it perfect for situations just like this. No wonder Grievous had 3 of them on the planet, presumably strategically placed throughout the Separatist compound. With Kenobi hot on his tail, Grievous raced through Pao City, getting far away from the main battle raging on the many platforms. With Soulless One not far away, Obi-Wan managed to catch up to Grievous despite the head start. Kenobi at his side, Grievous decided to break out his arsenal, trying to zap Kenobi off the boga with a few well-placed shocks from the Electro Staff's purple beams, but the Jedi proved too clever, wresting the staff from Grievous's grip and smashing it into the teeth of the bike, even knocking a few off. Seeing his bike starting to take damage, Grievous snagged the staff once more, and a tug-of-war ensued, with the general's strength proving too much for the wily Jedi Master. Banking around the dirt road corners of the city, 2 enemies entwined and fighting for their lives, General Grievous reached out for his hidden Annihilator, hoping to get a lucky shot off right into Obi-Wan's head. But as we all know, luck would not be on his side. Being thrown off the bike alongside his most hated rival, Grievous barely made it off in time to avoid cascading down into the miles-deep sinkhole alongside his trusty metal steed. Ironically, had the blaster stayed aboard the bike, it is highly possible Grievous would have killed Kenobi at long last, as the rifle wouldn't have been on the platform to begin with, and cowardly Grievous wouldn't have met his fiery end. While this is the end of the infamous general's most trusted ride, it appears to have had a legacy in the far-off reaches of the galaxy, on the mining colony of Teens Horki. A young man by the name of Jan Tosh used a very similar craft known as the 48-roller wheel bike, and although this particular vehicle was not a direct follow-up of the Goopat Corporation, being made instead by the Gallus Tech Corporation, it seems safe to say that whoever was working on this had heard some stories about the Clone Wars, about the many battles, and heard of Grievous and his 6 set of wheels. That wraps up the history. Let's explore the many behind-the-scenes facts about this metal marvel. Making its debut in the Revenge of the Sith Junior novelization, and then of course the movie itself, somehow this brief yet amazing chase scene is all that we get to see of Grievous's wheel bike, despite the general being in so many books, TV shows, games, and other forms of media. It's said to have been in The Force Unleashed, but I couldn't find it. Perhaps it was too hard to animate, but even when given a chance to use this vehicle in the Clone Wars, Filoni's team opted for the new combat speeder. While interesting in its own right, it would have been nice to see Grievous utilize such a recognizable part of his arsenal. And I say recognizable because despite only appearing in this part of the film, the Grevious Wheel Bike has made many appearances in various toy lines, multiple LEGO sets, and all new, albeit similar designs of the Clone Wars toy line, and even a Transformer version have all seen their way into collections of fans all over the world. Bafflingly, the original Hasbro toy has the pilot seat on the wrong side. Maybe it was a concept art given by Lucasfilm that ended up being switched in the final product, but there's never been a clear answer. Original concept ideas for Revenge of the Sith has the wheel bike being more like a sentient mount for Grievous, as a synthetic counter to the animal mount Obi-Wan rides. The strikingly similar 48-wheel roller made its debut into the Droids cartoon series in 1985. And while never confirmed, I find it highly likely that somewhere within the Lucasfilm think tank, someone had a passing memory of this oft-forgotten vehicle while designing the new version for Grievous. In fact, there's been a bunch of similarities like this, with names, designs, and story beats from droids making it into the mainline films. Even my favorite, Kylo Ren.
No one stops Kylo Ren. Blast him!
Another potential inspiration for the wheel bike is the Spider-Man villain Big Wheel. Jackson Wheel, real name, became the pilot of a giant wheel vehicle to take on his foe at the time, Rocket Racer. Just looking at this image, it's easy to make the comparison between the obscure 70s Marvel villain and our beloved Cyborg's pimped out ride. The Mono Wheel is a real-world translation of this iconic Star Wars ship. Though lacking the legs or laser cannon, it's fascinating to see that even in sketches from the 1860s, this concept has been rattling around in the minds of inventors, though it may be some time before our real-world counterpart can blaze past us at 200 miles per hour. So that's it for General Grevious's wheel bike. If you made it this far, please hit that like button, leave a comment and share. That's the best ways to help me out. And subscribe to bring balance to the algorithm. But most important of all, remember, if you're gonna drag race, always pick the Varactyl and family. And the Force will be with you. Always.